Morning, everyone. And I think for the very last time, I can actually say Happy New Year. We are so excited. I'm so excited to see you all. I wasn't here in December and we didn't have a meeting in January. So excited to have our group come back reconvening, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We're so excited to have Anthony Carnesecca, City of Los Altos Economic Development Administrator, here with us this morning. And Anthony is going to update us on an ongoing project, which is the modification on the proposed outdoor dining plan here in Los Altos. And this is a great forum opportunity for him to present what's been going on to the business community and to hear from you all. So definitely when it's his turn to speak, ask questions and definitely, say what you want to say within reason. No. So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves so he knows who's in the room. And I'm going to do my little bingo style, jump style. And so get ready to take yourself off of mute with Vice Mayor Weinberg.
Good morning, Jonathan Weinberg, just flying the wall.
Mary Prochnow.
Good morning, Mary Prochnow. I'm a property owner and a past council person, interested very much so in the parklets. Thank you.
Being here. Okay, you see DJVC LPF.
That would be Donna Verna. I need to change that ID. Donna Verna, CLPF is California Licensed Professional Fiduciary Office Downtown.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for being here. Kim Cranston.
Hi, good morning, Kim Cranston, downtown property owner.
Okay. Michael Murphy.
Michael Murphy, local rolfer and interested member of this committee.
Thank you. Gay Kraus.
Gay Kraus, thank you very much. I'm just interested in what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Lira. Are you on? Did you? Okay. Well, Kathy, well, if you don't know Kathy, you got to reach out to her. Kim, do you want to introduce Kathy?
Sure. Kathy Lira is with the Los Altos Town Crier and a member of our Chamber Board of Directors, very active here in Los Altos.
Thank you. Oh, bummer. Okay, well, use your chat feature if you have any questions, Kathy. Ginny.
Hi, Ginny Lear. I'm anonymous this morning, but with the Los Altos Women's Caucus and a downtown resident.
Awesome. Thank you. Abby.
Good morning, all. Ashante Hotel. I probably have the only allowed parklet here at the hotel out front, so that dining will forever be. And of course, I'm here to support my fellow restaurateurs. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Joe Beninato.
Good morning, Joe Beninato. I'm a Los Altos resident and I'm part of the Planning Commission, but just here attending as a resident.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
Jay
you.
Maletti.
It's Joe Maletti. I could go ahead and introduce Joe. So Joe is with Avid Bank and past chair of our board of directors, has served on the board multiple terms.
Awesome. Rashad.
Happy February 1st, everyone. Rashad, Star One Credit Union, also the treasurer of the Los Altos Chamber.
Yay, thanks for being here. Scott Hunter.
Good morning, Scott Hunter. I'm the executive director of the Los Altos Village Association.
Awesome, thank you. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Diana Batista, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford, and also on the board. And Dan.
Dan Mitchell. I work for Neuro Autonomous Vehicles driving around, but I also live in Los Altos and I'm frequently downtown. So would love to see more outdoor dining in the area too.
Awesome. And I think we all know the Kim Mosley, President and CEO of Los Altos Chamber, heck of a leader. So
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you.
Awesome. Okay, without further ado, Anthony, don't know if you're ready to talk to us about outdoor dining, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just sending the meeting invitation to my boss because
Oh,
he's
important.
I will share my screen if you all can see it. Let me know.
We can see it. And a
Perfect.
reminder to folks, if you do have questions as we go along, don't know, Anthony, if you want questions held to the end or as you go on, but you can always put them in the chat box.
I'm happy to answer anything as we go along. Just feel free to stop me. I think for those of you that attended the study session to City Council, this may look a little familiar. So I'll try and go through the City of Los Altos outdoor dining program. So, perfect. The purpose of this policy is to allow businesses to continue outdoor dining in parklets and on sidewalks after the local emergency declaration is lifted. I know that in a little bit of background, in 2019, the City Council adopted a pilot parklet program. At that time, we were looking at parklets that were about 2 stalls. They couldn't be across from one of another. It was a very small start to what eventually COVID would basically lead us into, which was open streets, and then now the COVID parklets that you see throughout downtown. And the purpose of this policy is to continue these programs heading into 2023 and beyond. So the current condition of our parklets, we do have a number of different parklets that are in different situations. The one on the left is State Street Market. You can see the deck. The one thing that all of our parklets do have, it's the unique design element to Los Altos, is our wine barrels. So if you've been downtown in Los Altos compared to other cities, it's the one thing that makes us stick out. And I do want to give a mention to one of our property owners downtown, Kim Cranston, for connecting us with a winery that did donate about 200 barrels. So a lot of these barrels were provided at cost to restaurants in the middle of the pandemic. But as you can see, there's a wide variety on how exactly businesses barriered their parklets. Unfortunately, the barrels have weathered the storm of a couple of years. They have started to see the impact of the constant weather on them. And there's some things from the current parklets that we would like to really look at adjusting moving forward. On the right, you can see one of the big ones is tents and canopies. That's going to not be allowed in the new permanent program as proposed, largely due to fire codes. So a lot of the proposal that's going to be presented today and that's being worked through the community right now is kind of twofold. There's a portion of it that's required by codification from different regulations from county fire, building codes, city regulations, but then there's also proposals from city staff that we think will enhance the program and make it the best possible program moving forward. So right now we do have 2 current programs. We have the outdoor display permit, which governs all sidewalk dining and all other decorative display items, including A-frames. So pretty much anything within the public right-of-way on sidewalks right now is governed by the outdoor display permit. And then we do have the parklet program, as I mentioned. The COVID program is in effect through the end of the local declaration. City Council did already approve a permanent parklet program in November of 2021 with a 1-year trial period that would come back to them. At this point in time, city staff is creating a new proposal. The proposed program is really to take a comprehensive look at all of our outdoor dining opportunities within Los Altos and divide these 2 programs into 3. Because realistically, the outdoor display permit should be for just decorative display items, and then we should have a sidewalk dining permit. So basically dividing those into 2 separate boxes. And then the last one is that we do want to revise the parklet program, which will provide dining and adjacent parking stalls. So I want to really emphasize that this slide is in flux. This is the slide that was presented to the City Council during the study session. At this point in time, I am meeting with restaurants and business owners and members of the community And so this timeline is potentially going to see some adjustment moving forward. So when you see June 30th, I want to be clear to everybody in the room and all those on watching the recording. We are working with restaurants and businesses to identify what the correct timeline could be for installation. So we're not rushing these parklets, and we make sure they be as successful as possible moving forward. But ultimately, the proposed changes, like I mentioned, revising the parklet program that was already approved by City Council, establish the sidewalk dining program, and then revise the outdoor display program to only be those displays. So one of the biggest proposed program changes under this adjustment that was presented to City Council and is in this program is that businesses that provide table service with items delivered and or carried away by an employee may apply for a parklet permit or sidewalk permit, but not both. And I want to touch on a little bit of the reasoning behind this. The biggest reason is that it's very difficult to get into ADA compliance, which is federal regulation, if you have both sidewalk dining and a parklet. And I think that the biggest challenge, aside from the ADA concerns, is that ultimately EBC is very strict about how you are allowed to serve alcoholic beverages outside. So currently in our parklet program, we are creating the permanent barriers along the edge of it that would ideally meet the ABC requirements once they start regulating again. So over the past couple of years during COVID, they have been very flexible with allowing restaurants to expand their dining operations outside. And so our permanent parklet program, we think meets most, if not all, of the requirements for that ABC outdoor dining space. Sidewalk dining is a little challenging because there's really no good way to fence it in along the sidewalk while also keeping the public right of way. So those are a couple of the big concerns regarding this either or scenario and why city staff is really recommending an either or, but not both. So the sidewalk dining program will allow businesses to place outdoor dining furniture on sidewalk for casual dining. We do require that they maintain at least a 5-foot wide minimum clearance along the sidewalk. As you know, this is very challenging in some areas of our downtown, but is possible in others. So it's very important that no matter where the restaurant is located, they keep that clearance so we can keep the public right of way open. And actually yesterday I did meet with a couple restaurant owners, and Kim and Scott who are on the call. And I think we have some potentially good solutions to ensure compliance, especially in some problematic locations. They must provide a layout with the locations of all dining furniture, and they must City Council will establish an annual program fee. So under the outdoor display permit, currently it is a one-time singular fee of, I think, $65. And so we would like to adjust that moving forward. So we have a new annual program fee. The required changes to the permanent parklet program, like I touched on earlier, this is a slide of really the ones that are really the changes to the program that are being done by regulation. So a lot of these are influenced by a code of some kind, requiring a greater distance from the center line to ensure safer vehicular traffic for emergency vehicles. So right now, our current parklets were put in place during a time where restaurants could not dine indoors. And so we really tried to maximize the space that restaurants were allowed to use, especially because for those of you who remember in September of 2021, when I was out there with Jim Sandoval and tape measures and blue tape because tables had to be 12 feet apart from one another. And so at that point in time, we really needed the maximum amount of space possible to ensure safety compliance with the COVID regulations that were at the time. And so now we need to look at it from a vehicular safety perspective, because the tables will be able to be closer together. And knock on wood, we won't hopefully have any more of those distance regulation from tables. And I already touched on this a little bit, but the protected dining area with concrete barriers and metal railings, we are proposing a standard approach and look and feel for the barriers similar to the wine barrels, but it's going to be more of a quote unquote permanent protective barrier with the concrete that we think will comply with the ABC regulations. And then the last one, permanent canopy structures are prohibited per fire code. As it is now, our current canopies are all done through a temporary COVID program, right? So all of the ones that you see currently are on a temporary basis. Moving forward under a permanent program, this would be prohibited. This is a great example. I forgot to do it after it was brought up at City Council. Please ignore the canopy across the top. Please just look at the barrier. This is really just an example of, under the proposed guidelines, what the barrier would look like with respect to the concrete and the railing. So this would be a uniform look and feel for all of our parklets. And then underneath would be a wood platform. And then businesses would be allowed for shade to have umbrellas over the top. So ignore the top. Please just try your best to look at the barrier, but this is an example of what we're looking at under this program. So these are some of the proposed changes to the parklet program that were presented to City Council for feedback to get more information. Under the currently approved permanent parklet program, restaurants are able to have outdoor dining on either a deck or at grade, which would be the actual road itself, as long as they did certain things, which included painting the parking stalls and doing some improvements to that space. The one thing that we have realized is that it is nearly impossible to get ADA compliance without a deck structure. So without a deck structure, you would need a ramp into the parklet, and then you would need to guarantee that you have a flat enough path of travel from that ramp to the flat section of the parklet. And realistically, it seems very impossible, especially with the way that our streets are crowned. So when you look at Main Street, you see that in the center, it's a little bit higher, and then it peels out toward the sides towards the curb. So if we were to allow the at-grade parklets, I think it would present a real ADA concern for both restaurants and the city moving forward. Establishing an annual program fee of $3 per square foot. I will say that this is one of the more challenging aspects that I'm looking into right now, simply because so many cities are looking at it right now. I wish that this chart was filled up with a lot more information. Mountain View is still TBD. They have not yet approved these fees. This was just something that I found online. And so we're really trying to get an idea of where the barometer is of local cities as far as what they're charging for the use of the public space for restaurants is. And an important consideration is finding that perfect spot where we're recovering the costs necessary to do the administration of the program, while also being aware that we would like the restaurants to improve their parklets and make them look as best as they possibly can with the funds. And then this is a limitation on the size of the parklets moving forward. So the proposed limitation is that you would only be allowed either all of the parking stalls along your primary frontage if it exceeds the following one, which is 4 angular stalls on Main or 2 parallel on State. And so it's whatever the greater of that is. So if your business fronts onto Main Street and you have 5 parking stalls touching your frontage, you would be allowed 5 parking stalls. If you were less than 4 parking stalls on Main, if you had 3, you would be allowed those 3 without needing approval from your neighbor. But if you did want to go to a 4th, you would need to get approval from the neighboring business owner and property owner. And it's the same rule for State Street. If you have over 2 on State Street in your frontage, you would be allowed to have that. But if you only had 1 or 2, you would be allowed that maximum of 2 spaces. Next steps, we are right in the thick of it. Kim and I talked yesterday about this presentation is very much in flux as we're adjusting, as we're going through our meetings and our iterations with business owners. So I have met with individual business owners. Tomorrow, all of you are more than welcome and invited to Q&A with business owners tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at Rustic House. I think Jerry, I don't know if he's on the call, he did mention that he was going to buy donuts. So if that is motivation to come hang out with us and do a Q&A, we would greatly appreciate it. We really want to get questions answered from businesses about parklets. And so I'm hopeful that today, if we can try to keep the questions as high level as possible at the program level. So kind of, why are we doing this? What's the thought behind this? I read in the program that. But if you have specific questions for a specific parklet, please come tomorrow, because I think tomorrow is going to be a good opportunity for all of us to sit together, and it's not going to be anything formal, but just answer questions about specific use cases. And then I am going to continue meeting with business owners, and I will say I am meeting with members of the community as well. So if people would like to meet with me, please let me know. And then next Wednesday, I will be presenting to LaPod. So Kim Cranston has the information for that if you would like to participate in that. I imagine my presentation will be on probably its 4th or 5th draft by that point, as far as what I'm adjusting. But like I said, this is the program guide and the program documents that were presented to City Council, and we're working through it as we meet with businesses. And it's really important to understand, and I use this example every time I meet with a business, that this program, if you imagine, it's like a switchboard with a lot of levers. And we have some levers that we can adjust. There's certain ones that maybe we can fine tune to respond to what we're hearing from businesses, but some of them are really affixed because of regulations. And so it's really important that moving forward, we try and figure out how we can create this program and make it as best as possible, because ultimately we would like to provide quality outdoor dining, I think, in Los Altos moving forward. I think that's it for my presentation. I did turn off my video. I apologize because my internet is not very good. So, but I am here to answer questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. That was really informative. And I appreciate the update to this, and I know it is in flux. So are there any questions or comments for the group for Anthony? Feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat box or interrupt me. Anthony, Mary, go ahead.
So hi, Anthony. Thank you for all your hard work. Nice to hear from you this morning. But I have a couple of questions. First of all, do the designs that are submitted for furniture outdoors include the base of umbrellas? Because there's a particular problem in front of Satura. I'm very fond of Satura. I use them all the time, but they have very large, possibly 18-inch square umbrella bases. And when you're talking about 5-foot access, I want to know if that shows up on the drawing as well as the actual furniture, because that's more a hazard than a chair is, because if you're speaking to anybody, you don't see it. I was with someone recently who tripped because the street got busy and that big block of marble that sits under the umbrella stand was a great liability. So I want to know if that's included. Second of all, I want to know if somebody does injure themselves seriously on one of the parklets on city land, who's liable? Is that the business owner or the city that allows them to be out there on city ground? And lastly, sorry for 3 questions, Anthony. If I were to build something, what does it cost me to get a parking in lieu fee? What's the fee for one parking place? I would like to see how that compares to what somebody's paying for a year's use or however long. Does the fee last forever, or is that annual, the $2,036 or whatever it is? Okay, sorry for so many questions.
No, that's great. Mary, it's always good to see you and hear from you. I'll go ahead and answer each one. Yes, the umbrella stands will be within the layout. So when I talk about the outdoor dining layout, it will include those stands. So they do need to keep that 5-foot path of travel across the entirety. So we are Very aware that right now, some of the areas along the sidewalk are congested. And I think that that's another reason that we were kind of looking at that either or scenario for parklets and sidewalk dining, is trying to remove that congestion and put it into a parklet where ideally we'd have a bigger dining area. Who is liable? I don't know how to answer this without getting in trouble from the city attorney. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that we are having them sign an indemnification agreement with the city. I believe that puts the liability on the restaurant. That being said, the city is doing their due diligence when it comes to ADA and all of the other regulations to make sure that the parklets are in substantial compliance with all of those regulations. So I don't know how to answer that without getting in trouble, Mary, but I'll report back to make sure to get you a good answer. And then the cost of space, I did want to touch on it. So it's $3 a square foot. So for a 4-stall parklet, it's $2,000. So if you imagine, it would be at the $3 a square foot, it would be about $500 a stall. So the $500 initial application fee is a one-time fee, and then $500 per stall per year. So that's an annual fee that would be paid.
Thank you.
Awesome. Joe B.
Thank you. Thanks again, Anthony. I know this is a lot of hard work and a lot of input from everybody. I had 2 questions. One was, I was just trying to understand the logic around the either or scenario where you have to pick sidewalk or the parklet. And I heard your description. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that if something's surrounded on 3 sides, it is therefore secure. Whereas a table on the sidewalk is not secure and you could serve alcohol there. So am I understanding that distinction correctly? And then I'll ask the second question so you don't have to keep track of them afterwards.
Yeah, so currently we are in ABC is not doing enforcement on as long as you get a permit from ABC for the outdoor dining. So as long as you have that, I think it's according to ABC, it's like a temporary catering authorization. So what we're doing with the parklet program is trying to create a program that will get into substantial compliance for the future, as opposed to sidewalk dining. And this is where I don't know where ABC is going to go in a couple of years when the temporary authorization is done. But at this point, the parklet program with the permanent barriers around the edge is going to put them in as close to compliance as possible with those regulations. And if we need to close off that 4th side, Joe, like you're mentioning on the parklet, to get it into compliance, I think we're in a better position to be able to do that and make sure that the restaurants are not in violation of ABC moving forward.
Okay, so serving a beer at a table on a sidewalk is currently illegal if we weren't in an emergency situation. Is that accurate?
I believe per ABC that they would have an issue with serving alcohol in the public sphere without some type of barrier closed off.
Okay.
That being said, local regulations do not impact it as far as I know.
Okay, great. Yeah, it seems really confusing because we have beer strolls and people carrying around open containers all the time. But anyway, I'll move on. The second question was just about the pricing, and my overall question is, what is the objective with the pricing? Because I've heard many commenters talk about, well, that's valuable land and we need to get people to pay for it, and it's not clear, like, if someone's paying for a parking spot, what that money is going to, is it paying for a multi-story parking facility somewhere that nobody knows about? It feels a little bit punitive. And if it's all about cost recovery to pay for the administration of the program, then, per square foot feels a little weird. It's like, is it really twice as difficult for you guys to manage 2 parking spots as it is 1? So I just wanted to understand the pricing issue. And I know San Francisco and Mountain View and others are doing various things and still trying to figure it out, but we should do something that is appropriate for Los Altos. And I think simple is probably better. So how does the per square foot fit into the calculation of the pricing?
So this is where kind of every city is all over the map as far
Right.
as trying to figure out what makes sense for our community. At this point in time, that $500 per parking stall seems like a middle of the road cost. And so if you build it out that way, that $3 per square foot is basically the $500 per stall. I think at this point in time, the good news from my meeting with restaurants so far, I will say to the group, is that none of them have expressed concern about that cost being prohibitive to a parklet. So the good news is that I think they're at least comfortable with this. I don't know what the final iteration is going to look like. That's why I think going forward, this will be a policy question for City Council. How would they like to shape the fee moving forward? And so to answer your question, like I said, this is kind of the influx one of where I'm trying to figure out what's best for the community. As far as where the money is going, the money would go into the general fund, and it would cover the expenses to the initial $500 would cover the initial review fee, and then this fee would cover the annual inspection, because every year they will need to recertify for their parklet, so they'll need to resubmit their application. And then if there's any issues, so if we need to have someone go out and ensure compliance, different things like that. At this point in time, for like the parking fund, we do have funds for the downtown maintenance and parking, and that's kind of in a separate bucket, if you will.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kim Cranston.
Hi, thank you. First, I put in the chat an email where if you're interested in getting the Zoom link for the session that Anthony mentioned with LaPod next Wednesday, please send me an email and I'll send that link to you. We generally send them out the day before the meeting. A couple of questions, Anthony. First, as I recall, some of the temporary COVID-related parklet stuff provided because we were under emergency orders, exemption from ADA, or at least some skirting around that. And I wonder if President Biden's announcement that he will end the federal COVID public health emergency on May 11th affects the timing of this at all. And second question I have, I'll ask the other one I have now too. You mentioned that there will no longer be permanent canopies under the parklet program. Does that imply that during the winter, for example, restaurants could put up temporary canopies so that guests could dine when it's drizzling? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. For the federal impact, I don't have a good answer because I'm not sure exactly what he'll be peeling back as far as legislation. I do know that our COVID program is largely tied to the health order. So it's at the state and the county and the city level. So I don't think the program will really be impacted by the federal at all, but it could. I think ultimately it will come down to the state and county timeline for whenever they adjust the COVID temporary rules like you're talking about. No permanent canopies. I think at this point in time, we are saying no canopies of any kind under the guidelines, but that could be a conversation if people are able to provide more information about what exactly they would want. But I think as it stands now, I think we'd be cautioned of doing temporary canopies. And how do you determine when they're allowed? Because fire code really doesn't allow canopies in permanent structures. And so I'm not really comfortable or sure if temporary canopies would be even allowed in a permanent structure, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Dan?
Yeah, I'll just second what Kim was saying around the canopies. I think, some type of shade covering, maybe that's out there just in the summer or something like that, might be useful in any of these places. But I really love the idea of the consistent design going up and down the street for all the different things. And so I think that's really well thought out. The other thing I'll mention is in conversations with other cities and downtown areas, we know that parking for like delivery services has become a little bit of an issue. And so it doesn't need to relate to this proposal directly, but at some point in the future, there may be more delivery services, and now there's less parking spots in front of a restaurant or building. And wanted to explore or suggest maybe that there's delivery parking spots or loading zones behind the building to keep the traffic in the front of the street directly for the people who are there, or the new parklets. And the delivery services could be in the back of the building using some of the city lots or other places behind some of these restaurants and businesses.
I think that's a great idea and great consideration, because we do know that people are using delivery more than ever. So if there's a way we can try and make it as easy as possible, and like you mentioned, prevent congestion on Main and State Street. I think right now we do have temporary loading zones on the numbered streets. So for delivery trucks, that's a lot of where they're at. But I think your idea is great to look into that, so I will.
Mary, back to you. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Anthony, you said that there'd be a annual renewal. At the time of the renewal, will the neighbors be again invited to approve or disapprove if in fact the restaurant is using adjacent parking slots? The reason I'm asking that is, let's say the retailer changes. We've had the loss of a lot of our standard retailers. One of the reasons I'm in favor of no canopies, because if somebody tells me there's a great little children's store on Main Street and I drive down, I can't see them for the canopies. But anyway, I'm asking, will on the annual renewal, the adjacent owner and business owner be asked again whether or not they want to see those parking places used?
Yes. So that's an important consideration for businesses when they're kind of scaling what the size of the parklet is going to look like. So if they are going to be going in front of a neighboring business, being aware that that could be in flux. I will say that looking at parklets with restaurants to this, or with businesses to this point, it has felt like most of them could get what they're hoping to get out of the program with their primary frontage, or with the parking stalls that are touching their frontage. So the way to imagine it, and this was a great question from Vice Mayor Weinberg, I think during the meeting, is does the parking stall, if it's within the frontage, count even if it's partial? And I think at this point, that's the direction that we're heading, where you would count that as their frontage and they wouldn't need the neighboring approval for that one. But that is also to the maximum of 4 total, right?
And presumably if they have no stalls, they have no options, right? If in front of them is a fire hazard or some other, yeah. Right?
You're saying that if they don't have stalls directly,
yeah, in front of them, if there's some other alternative, for instance, a fire hydrant or some other obstruction, could they ask to use the neighbor's space if the neighbor were a retailer, or are they just out of luck?
I think if there's a specific scenario that you're thinking about, I think I'd be happy to go take a look. But for the most part, I think if you don't have the stall spaces in front for the parklet, or your neighbor's not comfortable, the sidewalk dining program does allow you to do that. So it does allow you to use the sidewalk as long as you're in compliance. So that would probably be the best option for a business if they couldn't use that stall.
But if a
Correct.
neighbor were comfortable, you could do it even if you didn't have your own? Is that what you're implying?
I think I would need to take a look to
Yeah,
see.
that's fine.
I think the challenge is how adjacent is it to the business, because for ADA path of travel, employees, customers need to be able to easily access the dining area from where they check in at the table. So I think those are going to be kind of individual investigations, if you will.
I'd say you're a wizard to run through all the various regulations from all the people you have to work with. So thank you.
You know, I wasn't in Los Altos when Mary was mayor, but I get an inkling as to how Mayor Mary was, and I love it. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, I think. So we're going to go to Kim Cranston and then Marie Young.
Okay, one quick one here. Anthony, I understand that there was quite a bit of cost involved in putting in the
I'm
existing
in my
parklets.
office on
I'm
a
sorry.
Zoom call.
You all can put yourself on mute. Thank you.
So Anthony, I understand that putting in a parklet is fairly expensive. And so for those that have already done so, I know that some of the new specs for the new parklets require that sort of barrier between the wood and the concrete below the street. Are you looking at grandfathering existing parklets, except perhaps having them replace the wine barrels with the new concrete and metal structure? And also, I want to just mention while I'm here, because I don't know if there's an opportunity at the end of the session, that I'm part of the Los Altos Community Coalition. We have a session next Friday. You all might find interesting a sneak preview of the permanent exhibition at the History Museum. I'll put that in chat.
So looking at existing parklets, yes, I have met with a couple of the business owners that do have existing parklets. I will say that when I talk about all these levers that I'm mentioning, which ones are the ones that we can't adjust. So if it's something that's coming into compliance from an outside agency or a federal, state, local regulation, those are ones that we can't really touch, but we could look at potentially trying to find ways to help them in the short term not in the short term, in the ones that we can have control over, if you will. So I have heard that, and we are sensitive to how much they cost, and especially the businesses that have them in place. I will say that all of the parklets that you see out there now were built under the COVID rules. So they were, I know that there was a significant investment, but they were built for the COVID program. And so how do we balance the equity of that? And so I am trying to be as sensitive as I can to the cost that's already been put in, but also be aware of businesses that need to put in even more potentially now under the new rules. So
thank you.
Okay. Marie.
Thank you. Anthony, you have such a hard job trying to make everybody happy. I don't know how you do it, but my question is, will the consistency of design allow for cultural differences? So say, for example, there's an Italian restaurant and a Georgian restaurant. Can they somehow, demonstrate their uniqueness? And if so, how would that happen?
This is a great question, Marie. I think what I've heard so far I've heard kind of mixed reviews from restaurants. I've heard that some really like the idea that all of them will look the same, that they'll have a consistent look and feel. And then I've heard from others that they would like to have a little bit of flexibility in what those design guidelines are. So when you mentioned my tricky job now is to try and find a way where if we do want to have like some smaller design differences on parklets, how do we allow that flexibility while also retaining, I think, which we've been very good about having compared to, I think, some other cities, is a very unique feel and a common aesthetic for all of our parklets. So all of our parklets, when you're in downtown, you're in Los Altos. You're in Los Altos because you're dining there. So the question you're asking is very timely and especially challenging. I do want to say that under the rules currently as they're proposed, you would be able to plant whatever flowers you would like within the planters. So these are planters. So we do encourage creativity with plants. And then I have talked to some businesses who would like to repurpose what they already have as barriers, like the plants and the trees on the perimeter. If you think of Rustic House, they're beautiful trees that we all remember when they were tiny seedlings when they first were planted, and now they're grown pretty big. So we do encourage restaurants, if they want to use those moving forward, they would be able to, as long as they're within that perimeter parklet barrier. So it's a great question.
Okay, well, you all were quick with your questions. Is there any more questions or comments for Anthony?
And I will say, Diana, that if anybody doesn't feel comfortable sharing now, or they want to meet individually, or honestly, I'm pretty busy the next couple of weeks, but if you do have feedback, you can always send me an email. I'm always available by email if people want to directly reach out.
Thank you. Dare I ask you to put your email in the chat box?
That's perfectly. I think almost every person on this call probably knows my email. But
probably. Okay, Kim, do you want to say anything to Anthony or about Anthony?
Sure. I wanted to just touch on a couple of things based on the questions and conversations that I thought might be helpful for everyone to touch on. Joe had asked questions about the ABC restrictions prior to the pandemic. And if you can visually kind of imagine the structure that's built in front of Amandine on First Street, which is a parklet on the sidewalk, but it has the fencing area. So it's a clearly denoted area all the way around. That's an example of what was required previously. So that might be helpful to everyone in kind of visualizing that. So it's, it'll be a matter of seeing how things move forward. And it's not just for Los Altos, but for the entire state, right? So as those changes would take place, there would be much more feedback from the state and restaurants other than Los Altos. So that would be significant, obviously. I just wanted to make myself available too if there are any questions. I've been meeting with Anthony and then with other restaurants as well on my own to make sure that we're collecting the information and feedback and working together to create a proposal that works for our business community, that works for the community at large, and really ensures the vibrancy that these parklets have been able to generate for our community. So feel free to give me a call or reach out to our office anytime as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Anthony, for being here this morning with us and sharing all the information and taking the feedback and questions. So, long time ago, I thought I wanted to be an economic development person. Maybe not so much anymore, but thank you for always being here and for being so approachable. We really appreciate it. Kim, any announcements from the chamber?
Sure. I also wanted to concur with that and really congratulate the city staff for putting together a solid proposal and going through a very thorough process of obtaining feedback from our community, and then pushing and pulling on those levers, being open to partnering together to come up with a positive solution. And Anthony's been a great partner in that. So just wanted to say thank you. So again, just a reminder, the follow-up session is tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Rustic House in the Rustic Room. Going forward, let's see, for our March meeting is Mark Berman for Government Affairs. So you'll want to tune in to hear updates from Mark, our assembly member. In March, and then in April we have a Complete Streets Master Plan presentation from Stacy Banerjee, chair of that commission. So that's kind of what we have going on further out. Tentative date that I could share with you to put on your calendars. We're very, very close to final confirmation, but April 7th is looking like the date for the State of the Cities luncheon, which will be back in person for the first time in many years. So really looking forward to that. That would be at Fremont Hills on the 7th. So stay tuned for further details on that. But it should be a great turnout. And they have done some, in the pandemic, they've been busy reworking and updating things there at the club. So really look forward to a wonderful experience there and seeing everyone in person again. We'll be invited elected officials to come and join us, and that should be a really informative session. I think that's all I have.
Awesome. Are there any announcements for the good of the order? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Hopefully we'll see you again next month. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. You got 7 minutes back. Thank you again. Bye, all.
Appreciate all of you. Thank you. Let me know if you need anything.